The Spirituality Now podcast is sponsored by Delaflor Teachings International, a spiritual and systemic coaching and consulting company with the mission to help individuals, businesses, and corporations create brilliant futures through sustainable transformation. Also sponsored by the Network for Human Empowerment, a philanthropic TV network that serves Spanish-speaking communities with free, conscious education aimed to empower individuals to become the best versions of themselves. And our podcast producer, Ascend Media, Authority Syndication, delivering premium video marketing, podcast production, and social syndication.
Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast, a podcast committed to supporting you in your journey to life mastery and personal enlightenment. Welcome, beloveds, to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor, and I'm actually feeling today really like in the flow. You know, sometimes I feel that I'm really active participant, producer of manifold things to hopefully live my humanity better than it found me, you know, just as a moral duty of my soul. Sometimes I feel more in my feminine, sometimes I got to bring my masculine. But today I'm really feeling in the flow. Perhaps it's because tonight I'm serving a tea ceremony for really beautiful people. But it's also because of my beloved guest that is here, that she tends to not only tends to the garden of flow of humanity, but her whole feeling or vibration or aura and expertise and mastery is in a nutshell for me, helping people flow. How? Through the art of story, through, you know, publications that matter, from, you know, a really craftsmanship or craftsman-womanship, on bringing into reality of birthing words into existence, birthing worlds with words. So let me get to it. Let me introduce you to her. My beloved guest today is my beloved ally, friend, and I believe, you know, I met her in other lifetimes and probable futures too, is Kristina Marie. Kristina is a transformational story mentor, book doula, and the divine creatrix of Voyages of the Spirit. She worked as a journalist and an editor at top national publications, including T Magazine, at the New York Times, for more than a decade. Imagine. Now she combines her publishing skills, intuitive gifts, and soul's wisdom to support leaders, visionaries, and storytellers of the new myth. And we're going to talk about that today. She guides these leaders in fully living their personal myth, telling their stories, and birthing their books through her signature transformational story map process, which is really powerful. As you could hear me at the beginning, you know, imagine it's not only about copywriting, is not only about publishing books, is that the power of your word, the I am presence, the power of your story. She has the ability with her mastery and her skills to birth your words and create new worlds. Kristina is also a teacher of the rising star, a solar-powered healing modality, and unity consciousness transmission from ancient Egypt, and initiates others into this master seed lineage. We will make sure to put all the information of Kristina, where you can find her, social media channels, Facebook, emails, whatever it is, so you can meet Kristina too. So my beloved Kristina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so beautiful to be here with you. And yeah, what an introduction. I'm just already feeling the magic and all that we're weaving here today. So thank you.
Yeah. So my beloved Kristina, you're always so humble, but you know, as I'm sharing with people, I always say, like, all my guests are so incredible humans because they are all so humble, really servants of humanity, and also really powerful people. And sometimes I tell them, in your humility, let's also celebrate how incredible your skills, your mastery, and the amount of work you've done in the world are, right? Like kind of being, I'm going to be proud for you all, and I'm going to blatantly promote all of the incredible skills that you have. Because when someone has mastery like you do, and most of my guests do, I actually, we invite people that have achieved that level of mastery in their lives, but the inner work, outer work and contribution they're doing in the world. So we don't invite anyone just to fill a spot in the podcast. Actually, I kindly remind everyone that listens to us, we're a philanthropic-based podcast. That's why we don't get, at least not yet, I'm not close to that, but at least not yet, we don't get sponsors in a way that you hear 10,000 commercials and buy these chips or get this tea. I could actually offer tea. I love tea. I could bring that, but I am kind enough for everyone. This is such an addiction and an obsession of mine that we would not have a podcast if I start speaking of tea. But, we are a philanthropic-based podcast where all of these incredible guests and teachers like Kristina, they come and contribute. They come and contribute, we contribute, and just give them some love, help us keep going just by liking, subscribing, sharing feedback, asking what you want to hear more of. We're in all the platforms. Remember, Spotify, LinkedIn, your robots, Alexa, Sonos, Amazon Podcast, every single where. All right. So my beloved Kristina, with these skills of yours, with this mastery, I have experienced your friendship, your allyship, we've shared like wisdom together. And there is a feeling in your body that you emanate, that you are really an open invitation. And the podcast is titled, Living Your Story of Divine Union. But I want to go because you really emanate this incredible deep work that you've done to create divine union, first within you and then to offer it to another. So let's begin a little bit. Let's time travel a little bit in your childhood, where Kristina of the past, which actually the inner child is the future itself, but we can address that another time or maybe another podcast that you'll come back. But I want you to walk us a little bit where in Kristina's lifetime, little Kristina, began to be shaped, molded, birthed, rebirthed into not only the woman she's today, but to the doula she becomes for so many incredible leaders in the world to birth their stories, birth their myth into divine union for themselves and those they serve. So tell us a little bit about the times in your childhood where maybe a challenge was happening and then you began to find the new myth in you, in yourself.
Beautiful. Wow, little Kristina, she's quite an adventurer. In reflection, I feel like the thread that really moved me, that continues to move me, that I continue to follow past, present, and future is really this deep curiosity and this deep, when I was little, I just loved to learn. That's the one thing that I just remember my parents talking a lot about and being reflected back to me a lot, is I was just this infinite well of curiosity. And I just absorbed everything like a sponge. And it's so much of what, really opened me not only to stories, to my path as a storyteller, which first began, in journalism, but as a child, I feel, as we're experiencing, there was a lot for me in terms of that sponge, which allowed me to be this weaver, this storyteller, this learner, this sort of eternal student of life, was also the sponge that was just sort of receiving everything from many, many realities, many dimensions, without really knowing how to navigate that. And so much of what I think, my gifts as a child, which created their, moving through challenges with in my, earlier years of learning how to navigate my own field, really, just being so empathic and being such an open field to things, especially living places like New York City. That was a very unique challenge to navigate, and also just created a very high level of, mastery in terms of really diving into the deep end, as a lot of my gifts came online while I was, living in New York City, working in Times Square. That little sponge, that little Kristina sponge, was very much oversaturated and overstimulated in ways that, moving through that, and as, the process I walk people through now in this, the Transformational Story Map, and really understanding the new myth first as we live it, which becomes, all of the things that all of the ways we're externally sourced. So all of that conditioning from childhood, all of the programming, and just the ways that we learn how to be something other than ourselves. All of that is kind of what builds us up in this first act of the new myth. This first act of the story map is us in this kind of world of external sourcing, where we tether, we tether our safety, we tether our success, we tether our worthiness, our value, all of these things outside of ourselves first, in order to, as we're kind of brought up in that, it gives us the opportunity really to, as we anchor to that impermanent external world, it's so circumstantial in a way that sort of tethers us or anchors us, to the illusion. And to me, that's just such a big part of our refinement as souls. And we do that sometimes for many, many lifetimes, just, finding ourselves through that external world, and then eventually realizing that anytime, once we've established ourselves in that world, we're anchored to something that is not true, and that isn't emanating from within, from our true essence. And, so much of my New York journey and just so much of my childhood and my life really building up to, my awakening and the ongoing, just being an eternal student of life. So much of that was through that external sourcing and tethering to the illusion in this way that it sort of allowed for that first death moment, where, we just realize we've gotten to the top of so many mountains, of so many ladders, and just, we haven't found what we've been looking for, which is our true self, our true essence. And we can never find that in the external. And so much of that for me, the challenges, and all of that attempt to really find myself in that external world is what the doorway was for me into, really that first death, and allowing, it's like the curiosity is what brings you across that threshold to say, I've tried this so many different ways, and every time I get to the top, it feels dead. It feels empty. It feels unfulfilling. It's just this kind of eternal loop of, just really not connecting in this way that I think ultimately, our deeper longing is what drives us, up those mountains, up those ladders. And yet anytime we're searching for that in the external, we will never find what we're looking for. And so that curiosity, is what really allows us to have the courage to say, all of these things we're